Good morning. Welcome everyone that's present and those that are viewing by other means. At this time, we will, I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we'll have our roll call. Everybody raised their hand, I guess. Okay. Next, we will stand and have our invocation and pledge. Let's stand, please.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together. We thank you that we live in a free nation and we can assemble as citizens to help guide our citizens here locally, Father. And we ask your guidance and your wisdom as we proceed through this agenda today. We ask for the safety of those who are still coming. We ask for our safety and those who are present as we leave from this place. Lord, I ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Face the flag, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any corrections or additions to the agenda as proposed?
Motion to approve.
Second it.
All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. All opposed, like. Mr. Manager, what you got next?
Yes, next you have public addresses to the board. You have a number of people signed up. So we call your name if you come forward and give your name and address. And we'll call the first one up. And if the county attorney can read our statement about public addresses.
Yes, Pitt County welcomes all comments on matters of public concern. I'll keep your time at 3 minutes. Pitt County asks that you keep all comments respectful.
So first we have Jamie Norville.
I'm Jamie Norville, president and owner of Select Custom Apparatus located in Falkland. I'm here to discuss and answer any questions you may have about the 5 remounts the county's put out to bid. We came in second place, just above the low bidder. Pitt County has always purchased their new units from us. We've always done their service work, and we've always done their remounts. A couple years ago, a remount or an ambulance was brought to our facility thinking we were going to do the 3 2 years ago, but for some reason got put on hold, so it's still sitting on my lot. We've got a lot of agencies that sole source with us and don't go out to bid. We are a Pitt County company that's been in business 30 years. We have a lot of employees that live in Pitt County. We've always been within your budget on remounts and new units. Excuse me. At the January 11th meeting, the Oversight Committee recommended that the county go with Select Custom on the remounts due to past service and quick turnaround quality of our work. Our facility is approximately 20,000 square feet, and we do all the work in-house. Nothing is sent out except for front-end alignment, NC state inspection, and upholstery. If you award to low bidder, the units will go to the mountains and then be shipped to New Jersey. If any major work has to be done, the units could possibly have to go back to the mountains or possibly back to New Jersey. And I just ask you to keep the business in Pitt County and keep it local. And if you got any questions, I'll answer them. If not, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Any questions?
Yes.
Thanks, sir. That issue comes up later, John.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next we have Tom Best.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here in support of the ordinance for the drones with unmanned aerial systems. But I have one thing that I wanted to share with you that's not in that current ordinance. And I want to talk, and by the way, I am Tom Best, and I'm representing Soil and Water Conservation District for Pitt County. I'm the vice chair of that committee. And one of our stakeholders, of course, are the farmers, and of course many of you, we all support the farmers in this county. And there's one type of drone that would not be, may not be able to be used if this ordinance is adopted as written, and that's a autonomous drone. We've heard about autonomous vehicles. Autonomous items are coming out fast. These drones exist today. They're not the future. And what that would allow a farmer to do is actually have a drone that would be on a station in the field and be able to fly and take aerial shots of that field, which is very important for precision farming. as we will know it in the future. And I would like to see the farmers exempt from this line of sight section in this ordinance. Because line of sight means a human has to stand there and watch it. That becomes very expensive for a farmer. Whereas with an autonomous drone, they actually have their own stations in the field, and they come and go as they have to recharge and fly, and they're being guided by GPS systems which are set up in advance, and they're under program control. They would only be flying over a farm, which would be private land, private area. So that's the only thing that I would ask you to consider, is to keep that in mind when this ordinance is adopted completely, because right now it does exempt certain things, but it doesn't exempt an autonomous drone. And I recommend that you consider that. If you have any questions.
Any questions? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the list, we have John Banks. Is he wishing to speak?
Good morning, Commissioners. Morning, staff. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I guess I am. I would like to give you a couple facts. Currently, there are 700,000 drones as of October 2017 registered in the United States. The FAA projects there'll be 7 million by 2020, and in November 2017, 19,000 drones are registered in North Carolina. In October 2017, the Charlotte Police Department had a near miss with a drone over the city of Charlotte. May of 2016, a blue drone flew within 150 feet of an airliner in Charlotte. September 2017, a Black Hawk helicopter was hit by a drone in New York City. Flying close to the UN, the helicopter was doing a flight protective zone around the UN because a TFR, or temporary flight restriction, was around the UN, and a drone hit it. During football games in Greenville, a TFR, temporary flight restriction, is around the football stadium. You can't fly an airplane or a drone within 5 miles of the football stadium, which means if I'm flying at Greenville Airport, I can't take off and land during 1 hour before a football game, 1 hour after. And they do that because of crowds. You got 40,000 people in a stadium. If somebody was to have an incident, you'd have a major problem on your hands. In 2016, 17, in October 16th, in Quebec, Canada, a drone hit an airliner. No injuries were reported, but it hit it around the runway in Quebec, Canada. And this past year, in 2017, the FAA reported that 100 incidents are being reported every month where drones are flying too close to aircraft. And I have one opinion of what Mr. Best said about autonomous drones in fields. We have a lot of fields in Pitt County. Farming, as Mr. Owens knows, is a huge factor. You have to spray your crops either by tractor or by an airplane. And if you have an autonomous drone, he's flying a grid, which they can do. They can stay within a boundary of a field without you seeing it. But how's that drone going to know if a crop duster is coming across that field to go to the next field, in the next farmer's area? He's not going to know. That drone's not going to sense that other aircraft. Or it's not going to sense if he's out within a flight pattern of Pitt Greenville Airport, north of the river, or even west and east of the airport at 5 miles. That drone would not know that an aircraft is circling to land at Pitt Greenville. I'm not a big person on regulations and limiting people's rights and et cetera, but the FAA put these drone ordinances in place for future safety. The North Carolina Department of Transportation has a drone staff now that educates the public on drones. And we're going to have to look out further because next couple of years, you're going to have a lot of people flying drones that don't know what they're doing. And the best example, and I'll close with this, is at the airport. I think last year, they had a drone come within 25 feet of a helicopter over here by the helipad. The only reason they knew it because a pilot was on the ground. He saw it, he called the police, and I think Mr. Webb, you may know about that. Commissioner Webb. They arrested that person because he was endangering the safety of people on the ground. So there's a lot of good things about drones. They're good for farmers. They're good for fun for hobbyists, recreationists. But at some point in time, they're going to be an issue, and maybe we need to be a little progressive about this. It falls in the guidelines. I think Jordan Smith, Janice, did a good job falling between the federal guidelines, so it doesn't operate outside of those, and that's all I've got. Any questions?
Any questions? Not, thank you, Mr. Bell.
Thanks, sir.
Next, we have Randy Gentry, Chief Gentry from the Sheriff's Office. Is he here this morning?
Good morning. Real simple, just follow up. The drone ordinance, there's no issues with the Sheriff's Office in supporting this ordinance. There needs to be some regulation, and it's easier to do it up front and get it right than to wait for an incident and be in a catch-up position. So Sheriff's Office is fine with the ordinance.
Thank you, Randy.
And our last speaker, cannot read the first name, but Mr. Vogel, first priority.
Morning, everybody. Greetings from Jefferson, North Carolina. My name is Eric Vogel. I'm with First Priority Emergency Vehicles. I apparently am the low bidder for your remount project, and I too am here just to answer any questions. One thing I do want to clarify is that your trucks will not, if awarded this contract, your trucks are not going to New Jersey, and we also do all our own work. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, that's all we have signed up, unless there's somebody in the audience who didn't have an opportunity to sign up.
All right, ready to go forward with this next item?
Yes, sir. Next, you have your items to report. Your first item is for the interim tax collector, Raymond Revilla, to give the report on the unpaid taxes for calendar year 2017 that are liens on real property.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, good morning. In your Ames packet, I had to prepare a report, and this is per the statutes 105-369A, and that was a preliminary, so I asked the clerk to pass out the final version. And the final version reflects the data through last Friday, February 2nd, and then I've also just tried to summarize that report, and I've got a couple of PowerPoint slides. But basically, we are required to report to you on the amount of unpaid taxes on real property, or as a lien on real property. So the county amount is $2,890,877. The second item on the pie graph there is how much is for the EMS district and other special districts, and that's $232,627. And then the third part of the pie chart is the municipalities. As I'm sure you're aware, the county collects for 6 of the 10 municipalities, and the total there for the municipalities, $954,756. So the grand total, and again, this was as of Friday afternoon, is $4,078,260. And I also had an additional chart. Well, the additional chart was just giving you what the various amounts are for the 6 municipalities. But we are required to give you this report per the statute. Any questions?
Any questions from this report? If not, do we have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Any discussion? Mary?
I'd like to know how many certified letters were sent out, and what was the cost of those certified letters?
I think, if I can interject, I think what we're talking about here is the unpaid property taxes from 2017 compared to the certified letters are for wage garnishments. And we do send out wage garnishments, which is mandated, required by North Carolina General Statute. And we do spend about roughly $54,000 a year in certified letters for wage garnishments. You want to add anything to that, Mr. Revilla?
I had prepared that, sent that in an email, so I don't have that with me. But any type of enforcement action, which Mr. Elliott mentioned, garnishments, also bank and credit union attachments, sheriff's levies, those type of things, we send out a certified letter, and that's per the statutes.
So what this report is doing is, this relates to another agenda item where you're going to give the interim tax collector the authority to advertise in the paper all unpaid ad valorem property taxes that were due in 2017. That's under your, I believe, items for decision, or maybe on consent, but the two are related. But, I mean, the wage garnishments is one tool in the tax collector's toolbox. You also use the debt set-off, you use, help me here.
The sheriff's levies is another one, and the bank and credit union attachments.
Right.
If there's no further questions, do we have all in favor of the motion indicate by raising your right hand? All opposed? So have it. Okay. Thank you. Who's next?
Next, Mr. Chairman, you have a report from our DSS Director, Jan Elliott, going to provide you their annual report. And I believe you have a copy in front of you of a printed color publication that she's going to go over as well as the information on the screen.
Good morning to everybody. I want to thank you, Commissioners, for your support of our department over the years. This morning, we're going to run through a little bit about the challenges that now face the county, as well as touch on our accomplishments during the past year. Our focus is improving the lives of our citizens through family supports and protection of vulnerable citizens. We provide quality services. That's our goal, and our goal is also to focus on continuous improvement. Now let's see if this works. Pitt County continues to be challenged with high poverty. This has been driving, of course, much of what impacts the Department of Social Services and what we do. This is, as you see here, that Pitt County is one of only 48 metro counties in the country that have identified as a persistent child and general poverty. So let's talk a little bit about what families might need to live in Pitt County. This is done from a United Way study. Justice Center has done a similar study. If you look at one adult, one infant, and one preschooler, and you look at the types of monthly expenses they're expected to pay, and clearly you see child care as being one of the big ones, it would cost you this much money to support your family without any financial supports from the public. And of course that figure would vary depending on the size of the family and the makeup of that family. So in Pitt County, the earnings of a typical DSS client would run something in the neighborhood of 35 to 40% of what that young single-parent family would need. And you see here average dollar figures and hourly wages for certain types of jobs, and these are frequently some of the jobs that we see coming in our doors. Our programs do provide work supports for families who are making lower salaries as they try to work up into higher level jobs or higher paying jobs. So some of those programs would be things like child care, food stamps, child support, and so on and so forth. And we certainly in Pitt County are working to try and skill up our clients wherever we can. So where do we spend the public's money? Obviously, $348 million was what last year's budget that we had. Of that, Medicaid is the biggest piece of $236 million. That goes back to the medical providers here in Pitt County. Another $48 million was provided through the food nutrition program, and that goes back to the grocers in Pitt County. You can see a lot of other programs that we provide. The Pitt County property tax provides about 26% of the part that actually runs through the general fund of $38 million. So Medicaid, we talked about Medicaid being the biggest thing. About 48% of our Medicaid recipients are children, and they account for about 21% of the cost of Medicaid. The elderly and disabled, about 25% of our folks are elderly and disabled, and they account for about 64% of the expenditures. If you look at our food stamp program, 51% of our folks who are receiving food stamps are in the working age range. Most of those folks do work. If not, they're disabled or they're caretakers of small children or elderly or disabled adults. As you remember, a year or so ago, the able-bodied adult program came into the food stamp world, and so most of those folks cycle on and off the program every year, but they don't get but about 3 months if they're not doing work-related activities. The rest of the folks that we are serving, again, are typically folks that you don't think of working, and 43% of those are children. If you look at our child care early education program, you can see a significant decline in the number of folks we're serving. And clearly that's a critical workforce issue for us in this community because families need child care in order to go to school and to go to work. Several things have caused that decrease. One is federal policy changes have impacted us, and certainly rate increases over the years have impacted the numbers of folks who can be served. We've implemented North Carolina NC Fast. I'm trying to give you that whole terminology, but we'll call it that. In child care this past year, and that has impacted our ability to understand exactly how our dollars are being spent and how folks are being served. So that too is probably impacting the numbers receiving services because we've been encouraged not to bring folks off the waiting list right now while the state gets a better handle on the dollars being spent. And certainly if we have children in quality child care, that has an impact on their future life because that gets them better prepared for school. Our protective services programs, you can see in child protection, we've basically remained pretty steady. The numbers of reports have increased by 84% over this time period, which is not reflected here. And the fact that the numbers of children being investigated going down can be in part explained perhaps by the fact we're getting smaller families, drug-affected infants, those kinds of situations. The cases are very complex, and some of them are pretty severe. On the other end of the spectrum, we're beginning to see more and more reports of elderly and impaired adult abuse and neglect. Exploitation is becoming much more common, and those are extremely complex cases when you have to chase all the money and how that's being spent and who's spending it and working with the banks and those kinds of things. The county expenditures are increasing in this area as some of our individuals that we're serving have very limited resources, and in order to protect them, sometimes we have to bring in county dollars to provide that placement or other service they might need. Our energy assistance programs, you see a slight decline in the numbers of folks who are able to serve. We've had about a 44% decline in available dollars, which has had some impact on that. We are, however, seeing a lot more people than this report reflects because our denials are increasing dramatically, and that's because of the fewer dollars. We've had such extreme temperature swings, too, over the last few years, and that has impacted the running out of the money faster. And then there are also the requirements that you have to be medically needy in order to get these dollars outside of those extreme temperatures, and so lots of folks don't qualify when their power's being cut off, but they don't meet that medical hardship. During the fiscal year of 2017, we did a variety of things, and these are a few of those highlights. We were one of 9 counties nationally participating in a business process reengineering program in our food nutrition program. We have achieved consistent compliance with the federal timeliness standards in both Medicaid and food stamps. Our accuracy rates are improving, as you see. We've experienced a 22% growth in our adult guardianships, and that clearly is coming from that increased protective services activity that we're seeing with the aged and disabled. We collected $15.2 million in child support during the last calendar year, and that provides additional resources for children. And I certainly want to thank the court system and the Sheriff's Department for their help in making this happen, because without them we couldn't have that kind of increase. Our food and nutrition program, we're one of a few counties in the state that actually is working around employment services for food and nutrition clients. We have a variety of activities going on. We work closely with folks like Life of NC, NC Works, Pitt Community College, and others to impact what's going on with our folks. Upward mobility is going to be key to moving out of poverty, and work is necessary to support families. So we see ourselves as very involved in helping to make this happen through the various programs that we offer. Can't have a report without Hurricane Matthew during that particular year. During and after Hurricane Matthew, we had 122 personnel sitting in the shelters working with the Red Cross. We also worked in the EOC, and after the storm, we processed more than $3 million in disaster food assistance for the folks here in Pitt County who lost food and other things during that storm. Our foster children, that number is going up dramatically. It increased 35% in the last year. We ended July of 2018 with 204 children in our custody. We have 17 young adults in the new 18 to 21 age program that we're also serving over and above the children in our custody. We were really excited this year that we were able to have 14 of our children adopted, which is a really great thing for kids who have been in foster care when they can't go home. We were selected as a pilot county for the state in the Child Welfare Program Improvement Plan. We're one of 10 counties working on that with the state. We have implemented permanency roundtables for our foster children. We're one of 2 counties doing that in North Carolina. And the goal here is to look at what are the barriers that are preventing these children from going home or having permanency, and let's see what we can do creatively to make something happen for these children. And I certainly want to recognize our staff for all the hard work and their commitment to the services that they provide for the citizens of this community, because they are really working hard. So that was a quick look at the key points in the report. Now I want to switch gears to talk a little bit about what's going on from the legislature and how that is currently impacting our department. As you see, the counties have now assumed full financial liability for any Medicaid payment that we make on behalf of an ineligible person. So if we make a mistake and that person's ineligible and that person receives a Medicaid payment service, then the county, if we are found out, the county will be responsible for paying the full cost of whatever that Medicaid service was. And I've shown you the average payment in 2016 because that's the last data I could get for a Pitt County patient during a 1-year period of time is a little over $5,000. Those of you who've had surgery and other kinds of things know that those dollars can mount up. So we certainly want to do everything we can to prevent an error from occurring. Counties must also review and respond now to any suspicious claims that get reported to NC Tracks within 5 days of notification by the state. So that's a quick turnaround to look at that case, make sure that those folks were in fact eligible for that service, and then notify the state that that in fact was correct or not correct, depending on which way it's going. We also have 9 Medicaid match reports now that we're responsible for working. Those reports can be lengthy, such as reports of earned and unearned income. So many of these kinds of things may require increased resources to accomplish. Additionally, all counties are going to now be audited annually by DHHS for Medicaid. Negative findings will result in corrective action plans, and failure to make adequate progress can result in temporary takeover by the state of our program, our operations for Medicaid. The state already has this authority in the timeliness for application process. Other changes, House Bill 630, most of you all know that is the regionalization bill. It started out as a child welfare bill and became a full DSS bill. It is going to require written performance agreements with each county beginning in July. It allows temporary state takeover of the County Department of Social Services if we fail to meet performance standards. The most current thing we've seen is a draft of 71 standards for which counties will be held accountable. We have not seen the final draft yet of that. We also don't know exactly how this process is going to work. It's still in development, let's call it that. This bill also requires that there be a study, and there has been an RFP put out, and they're about to award that contract to do a study of how social services is being operated in North Carolina and how that might need to change. And then effective March of 2019, counties can voluntarily regionalize if they want to, either as a county total or certain services could go together in multiple counties. There is a work group that the legislature appointed that is currently looking at state regionalization first, and then they will move on to forced county regionalization to determine if that will go forward or not. Other changes, and we really support the move of 16 to 18-year-olds from adult court to juvenile court, but that could have some impact on our foster care programs. We saw 4 children come from the juvenile court system this past year into our foster care programs. I don't know that this will happen with this group, but it's something that we have to pay attention to. The Federal Program Improvement Plan in Child Welfare is requiring more intensive services, more documentation, and more oversight to assure safety for children. And, you know, for me, it's a struggle, but the NC Fast rollout has begun in child welfare. And y'all do remember food stamps, Medicaid, et cetera. One of the pilots in this particular area has noticed a 1/3 reduction in productivity of staff during this rollout. And part of that could certainly be working the pilot process and the training and those kinds of things. We don't know in the long haul what this will mean, but certainly during the rollout, we could expect decreased productivity from our staff.
Jan, can you remind the board what NC Fast is, what it means to the department?
Oh, well, NC Fast is the computer system that does all of our work. Right now, every program except child welfare, adult services, and child support are operating through NC Fast. So we enter everything about our clients in there. We upload information. It is supposed to send all the notices, help us with the eligibility determination, all of those kinds of things. With child welfare, it's going to look a little different because obviously we're not determining eligibility, so it's going to capture all the information. We continue to have a significant number of workarounds because the system isn't always working the way it's supposed to. During 1 week in December, and this was not an NC Fast problem, but it was a state computer problem, we spent a whole week without being able to consistently log in to do any of our work. So everything about a case is going to be sitting in that computer system, and we would no longer have paper files if this goes as anticipated. So we're moving in that direction. Child welfare is the next one to roll out. We were scheduled to go live before Christmas. That got postponed. We were then scheduled to go live in Pitt County in January. That has now been postponed, and we are looking at July because the counties have said to the state, and the state has agreed, if this doesn't work like it's supposed to in child welfare, children can die, and it needs to work. So they are made a commitment that until the pilot counties say it's working, they're not going to roll it out. Does that answer that question for you, sir? Okay. Update everybody. Other things that are going on, Medicaid transformation. That's the managed care process for Medicaid. That is supposed to potentially go live. Look at all those things I said, supposed, potentially, July 2019. The feds still have not signed off on this. Various amendments have gone forward. We're not real sure what's going to happen or what the impact is on DSS going to be. We do know, we've been told we will continue to do the eligibility piece for this. There may also be the enrollment with the providers because there's a whole new system going to be set up for folks. It's an HMO kind of process. There will be 3 statewide providers and 12 regional providers that folks can choose from in order to meet their medical needs. I've got a 2-page document of different acronyms that I've got to learn for this particular process. There certainly are always going to be possible changes at both the national level and the state level, and we shall wait to see. So that is kind of where we are. Anybody got any questions?
Thank you for your report. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have one question.
Mr. Gage?
Do we have any records on our Medicaid payments on behalf of ineligible patients in the past?
Well, we get very little auditing done. What I can tell you is the federal government does audit us. We have not, since I've been here, because we don't get the chargebacks right now. The state gets those chargebacks. We have not been made aware since I've been here of an ineligible client as a result of that. The most recent audit that the single audit folks did not find one. I do know that in our own internal auditing, we're seeing about a 93% accuracy rate.
Okay,
So we audit more records than the rest of them do for us.
okay. So that 7%, would that fall into this category that in the future we would be
Well,
liable for?
right now, if it's like everything else, it would be if it's determined and reported. So when the DHS auditors come in, when the federal folks come in, or when the single audit folks come in, all these different folks are going to be reviewing records, and every time they find an error, then that would be reported to the state. Our own internal audit is for a different purpose up to this point, and it's been to try and improve training, that kind of thing. So that would not be reported.
Thank you.
Finish, Mr. Garris.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Webb and then Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. About how much do we spend on emergency assistance for heating and
Right now, it's 900,000 plus or minus a few thousand.
And what I was wondering, are there any flexibility in those dollars? It seems like it's probably the same people that, the list is probably familiar names year to year.
Right.
Because most of those folks are in poverty.
Right.
It seems like, though, just from a layman's evaluation, if we had the flexibility to maybe do some upfits on homes, I think, windows could save somebody $100 a month and put them back into an area where they could pay and pay their electric bill. And I know that in Roanoke Rapids, the electric co-op there has a program where they will come in and evaluate the home and do some on-billing financing, but will only do it if it will save the person at least 25%, I believe, on their bill. So even though they're paying themselves for the upfits, they still pay less than they normally would have, and that's gotten a lot of people from needing the emergency assistance, and it saves the co-op money because, oddly enough, the less they use, the more money they make, weirdly. But
Right.
Do we have anything like that here?
Well, we've got what the community action agencies do. They can do some of those kinds of things. We certainly refer to any of the utility companies to have our folks say, go talk to folks to see if they can come in and do an audit for you or whatever. Various programs, I think Council on Aging may have some things. I'm not sure about that.
Planning Department programs through the state, federal agencies as well.
Right. So there's a variety of things out there. We specifically don't operate any of those programs, and I don't know how many folks actually take advantage of it, but I do agree that would certainly be. And most of these folks are living in rental housing, which causes some conflicts, I think, sometimes for some of that repair work to be done.
It just seems like a good place for us to focus and even maybe put some pressure on these landlords, because the landlord makes nothing off the utility, but if they keep pricing people, if people can't afford to live there, they can't rent the property.
Exactly.
And it just seems like such a minor thing to do so that, kids can be warm before they go to school and have to prepare for a day. Taking a hot shower in the morning is a big benefit when you have a lot to go on.
It is. And our seniors also. So we need to, we'll take a look at that and see if there's anything more we can do from that standpoint.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to tell you that I'm impressed with I think it's the foster program, or is it the adoption program that's been advertising on TV, Finding a Home.
Right, that's run by the Children's Home Society. Those are the folks that we would go to sometimes to help when we have difficulty recruiting. So yes, I think it's a wonderful program.
Yes. Back to something that Mr. Garris talked about, the ineligible. Do you have a total number of ineligible clients? You don't keep that count?
Again, I can tell you that of the group that we serve about 33,000 people in Medicaid in Pitt County on any given day. And we know that we have, at this point, based on our internal audits, and we only are able to review about 2,500 cases internally ourselves a year. We know that we have about 93% accuracy. So that would tell you that there is certainly some potential there for there to be a problem. And this would also include our long-term care cases. So, for example, an average payment for a long-term care case in Pitt County is $30,000. So one of the things that we're going to instruct folks to do right now, we're concentrating on our newest employees to do those reviews on. They get a 100% check until they come off probation. We also look at folks that we have that are struggling and try to improve their capacity to do the job before we let them go. And then we try to get a small sample from every person in the agency. I'm going to try, and I'm going to tell our folks we've got to switch some things out, and we're going to have to start looking at those high-dollar cases, focusing on those folks like second partying our long-term care more intensely. If we know somebody's coming in with renal failure, for example, kidney transplants of potential, those are going to be high-dollar kinds of cases. We need to focus more on the high-dollar cases in doing our reviews if we have a clue that they're high-dollar cases. Sometimes we won't know when they come in the door.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Mary?
What concerns me are the workaround when new programs start, and the fact that the system does not work. You know, it started when we were concerned about the NC Fast and not getting it in. And with this rollout of the new system coming up, you can foresee some problems. And the state gonna drop it all on the counties because they send mandates down without funding. And when it comes to the low energy, Commissioner, the energy bills are not low, especially during this time. And I don't know what the problem is. I know that the repairs, that the planning department has been, very attentive about it. But when you look at the fact that when you're living in a lot of rental properties and the landlord rejects the complaint that there is a roof and that the floor is caving in and there are a lack of houses, the people gotta have a place to live. And the houses are not here for what the needs and the repairs need to be. So I don't know how you're going to address that problem, but when you have rental properties and mobile homes, and some of them are constantly being repaired, I've been looking around to try to find some way that it can be addressed. And certainly the planning department, Scott, has been really, really good at trying to assist that kind of problem. But energy, we have 3 or 4 different energy companies in this county, and there's a big difference in them as far as cost. And you know, Greenville Utilities has raised their rates. And so when you're seeing a lot of $900 light bills, that can eat up the money that the Department of Social Services have for assisting people. And these are not families that have 10, 12, 8 people. These are families with 4 people in the house. So I don't know what we're going to do, but you look at the fact that the flu case is coming up and the exposure, medical is going to be a real issue. I don't know how we're going to do it, Mr. Manager. You and Ms. Elliott, you're going to have to pull some rabbits out the hat.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Ms. Elliott.
Thank you.
Next, Sean.
Next, you have the monthly financial report, Chris McDaniel.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Board. The financial report that you have is as of December 31st, and it represents 50% of the fiscal year. As you'll note, total revenues are ahead of budget at 57%, and expenditures at 48%, slightly below at this time. As far as dollar volume, taxes ad valorem is up over last year, $2.3 million. Revenues for DSS is down $2.8 million. As we said last month, that was because of the state assuming the daycare program. You'll note also in the expense side, DSS expenditures are down 3.1 million, and that's also with the daycare program. In the expenses, general government over last year is up 3.4 million, but you also note your budget for general government is up almost 5 million over last year. We did in December encumber $1.2 million worth of purchase orders for the vehicle program for fiscal year 2018. We did close on the loan on January 5th, and that loan proceeds will be reflected in your January statement of $1.7 million. So the POs are in your general government number in December, but the revenues for that program will be in January. Also, at the end of December, we do have available in contingency $80,497, and at the end of December, we have $42,604 in grant match funds. And if there's any questions.
Any questions?
Motion to approve.
Second it.
Thank you. All in favor indicate by raising your right hand for approval. Thank you. All right, Mr. Stanley.
Next is Chris McDaniel again with the GFOA Distinguished Budget Award.
Pitt County has once again received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award from the GFOA. This is the 21st consecutive year that the county has won this award. We have received this award since 1997. It does put some pressure on the finance department to continue this string. There's 4 areas that the GFOA looks at, and that's it does the document serve as a policy document? Does it have a financial plan? Is it an operations guide? And also, does it communicate with the public? We were rated in all 4 categories as proficient, and we also want to recognize the board's efforts, the county manager's efforts, and I also want to call out Denise Urban and Kelly Dixon's efforts. They worked a lot of hours to put together the budget and present it, and it's each year it gets to be improved with different areas. And also to note, in North Carolina, only 21 counties received this award in the last fiscal year.
Good news. Any other information on this?
Mr. Chairman, I just, when something happens this many times in a row, you feel like, oh. But, the citizens, and somehow I wish the whole department could come up here one time so we could give all of them the applause. So thank you for naming those 2 people. It's quite an honor, and those 20-some that have received it this year, I wonder how many of them have received it in 21 consecutive years, I'd be willing to say. I think that's the biggest job we have as commissioners, and it's good to have leadership from this building in getting this done. So I think we ought to give you a round of applause.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may add, these documents that the Finance Department works on, both the budget document, the audit document, and what we call our popular annual financial report are all available on the website. And these documents are done in a very professional manner. Obviously, that's why we do receive the rewards. And they're really there for the public to know and understand how county government works, how our budget process works, all the way from a very complicated document such as the audit to a little more complicated or less complicated, the budget document. And the popular annual financial report of the PAFR is more of your average person's read on the who, what, why, where, and when of county government.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Manager.
Next, if Mike Taylor will come forward, he'd like to announce a new award the county has received. MIS has received, actually.
Good morning, Commissioners. On behalf of the entire MIS Department, Technology, want to just share this award from that we've received in our fall symposium in October. It's the Government Innovation Grant Award, It's sponsored by the UNC School of Government in conjunction with the local government Federal Credit Union and this is long, North Carolina Local Government Information Systems Associations. So with that said, we shared this also. We're recognized with Durham County, the city of Fayetteville. A panel of private sector technology professionals were the ones that reviewed the submissions and made their recommendations. Our particular one was a process of a virtual resource manager, which allows us to quickly onboard. You heard Ms. Elliott talk about the use of technology and fulfilling their roles and responsibilities, and this helps them get on board, become productive quickly, and probably more importantly, as staff transitions out, allows us to remove that access and protect the integrity of our information. So,
Thank you, Mike.
thank you.
Any questions?
Yes. Of particular interest to me when I read through this was the words grant award and cash award. So did we receive some cash?
You did not.
That I know. That I know.
It is a non-restrictive grant that made the acronym work with GIGA, but it was a $2,500 cash reward that all the staff members in our department will get to be recognized with some type of celebration.
Very good. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, the fact that you named Durham County and who else?
City of Fayetteville.
And the city of Fayetteville, they're much larger entities than we have here, but it also points out the wonderful staff that we have in this building and in county government and other buildings. So thank you all for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Elliott.
Next, James Rhodes with the report on the Hatcher Sand Mine from the last meeting.
Looks like Mr. Rhodes has produced his magic.
I have an award too.
Did you get some cash?
No, it's better than that. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Do have good news to report out this morning after many reports concerning this particular item previously. As you recall at your last meeting, we talked again about the Hatcher Mine. This is located out off Shepherd Mill Road, nearest intersection with Ward's Bridge Road. Had been out of compliance for a while. There have been some time extensions. We've been working with the property owners and the operators to bring it into compliance. And you may recall the deadline to meet those requirements was actually set in December. We brought it before you at your January 8th meeting. Tentatively set a public hearing date for your next meeting. Well, the good news is we did get the as-built plan by the deadline date of January the 22nd. I know the board was adamant about proceeding on forward with levying fines and penalties. We worked closely with the legal staff. There are strict procedures by which we would go through to levy fines and penalties. We gave them until January 22nd, drop dead date to bring everything in compliance. We had the as-built plan delivered to our office. We went out on site a day or two afterwards, and we did, in fact, confirm that all the 100-foot buffers had been restored around the site. So again, areas that were of concern, of course, on this southern side here, you may recall we even had areas that extended beyond the property line. So well over a 100-foot buffer had been disturbed, as well as crossing the property line itself. Other areas of concern were on the northern side, and all those have been restored. When we were out there, this is just an example. On the northern side, this area was getting real close to the property line, and you can see that whole 100-foot has been restored. And this is just another picture looking back toward the operation itself, where it's clean, the sand is clean, and all this, again, new material brought in or put back in place on this particular site. So with that, and according to our zoning ordinance, we did release the owners from that notice of violation after receiving the map And at this time, Mr. Chairman, we feel like they've met all the requirements, it's in compliance, and we're ready to close this chapter. So I welcome any questions.
Thank you, James. Anything, questions?
I don't have a question, but maybe this is something that we need to pay really close attention to in the future with all of our minds and not that you all have not, I know you have, but let us know when we have one that is not in compliance. And I think it's a good lesson for us as commissioners to know that maybe we need to move a little quicker on our end, because I don't even remember how many times we gave opportunities and chances and was not very businesslike, but I think this was, and thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you.
I think to concur with that, James and his staff did a superb job in detecting and seeing that these problems were resolved. And
exactly.
That goes well with y'all, James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, next.
Next, you have the manager's report. On there, you have the announcement of your next meeting dates, February 19th at 6 p.m., and then first meeting in March on March the 12th. And item B is just a reminder of the joint meeting with the Pitt Community College Board of Trustees for February 21st.
Do we have a motion for consent
moved.
agenda? Second. All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. All opposed, so ordered. Okay, Staley.
Okay, on items for discussion, the first item you have is Lee Guth, your Crawford Extension Directors, and come forward to discuss an amendment to the Leroy James Farmers Market bylaws.
Good morning, Commissioners. We have had a request from an area vineyard that would like to be able to sell the wines that it makes from its locally grown grapes at the farmers market. We took this information to the vendors at the market, and they voted with approval and requesting that I bring this to you all for your discussion. So what you have before you would be an amendment to the guidelines for the farmers market. Previously, it said that there was no alcohol on the premises, and what we've asked or asking you to consider is to change that to no alcohol consumed on the premises. That people who produced a wine from locally grown fruits could sell that at the market, and that was what the request was. So I'd love to take any questions or concerns you have and see if I can address those.
Mr. Garris?
Well, I don't have a question, but I do have a concern.
Okay.
To me, it would appear that selling alcoholic beverage at our farmers market goes against the original intent of the farmers market. And to me, if we agree to change this procedure, that we are opening the door for a lot of issues that I don't think we need to have. Number one, if we allow people to sell locally produced wine there, then why would we not also allow those to sell locally crafted beers there? And then the next, if we were to do that, then it would appear to me that the next logical step would be for people to have the opportunity to sample what they were buying. Now, I know nothing about wine except what I see on TV and what I read, but I do know that as I observe on TV, when people buy wine, one of the first things they want to do is sample it to see if it meets their taste and meets their approval. So again, I'm totally opposed to this because, again, I think it's just opening doors that we do not need to be opening at our, what I believe to be our family-oriented farmers market.
Thank you, Mr. Garris. Anybody who's cut on the line? Beth?
I think one of the big differences in this is that you said it, and I think I read it, that these are locally grown fruits or whatever they derive the wine from.
Yes.
And so that directly is connected to agriculture, and that there will be no samples served, and there will be no, because that's in the bylaws also.
That's correct.
And with that said, I'll make a motion that we approve, and we can still have
I second that.
Discussion? No further discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion indicate by raising your right hand. All opposed? Thank you, Jimmy. All right, next.
Next is an item you have me down for, and I'd like to ask Wanda if she'd come to the podium too. We may co-present this. You have a request from the Pitt County Committee of 100. I would probably say Greenville Utilities at the same time, but formally it is from the Pitt County Committee of 100 for the county's participation in economic development study. This would be it's a $50,000 study, of which the Committee of 100 is putting up $20,000. Then they're asking the city, the county, and GUC to put up $10,000 apiece as well. And there are two main approaches to the study. One is going to be to look at how economic development is delivered in Pitt County among the various organizations, whether the Industrial Development Commission, the city, Greenville Utilities, the Chamber, Uptown Greenville, so on and so forth. Then the other part of it is the company that they're proposing to hire, it's called Convergent, would actually perform a fundraising activity for the Committee of 100. They've showed where they've raised anywhere between $1 and $5 million for a particular community that then is used to fund economic development in that community. Also, the Committee of 100 has stated that part of their intent would be to use some of those dollars to hire staff, because they would be forming a new 501(c) nonprofit to potentially be the delivery model for those fundraising efforts. And then beyond that, we don't know how things would be formulated until the study is completed. One thing the Development Commission did ask when it met a week ago Thursday was that the idea of the whole effort was for the consultant to do the study, come up with a proposed structure of how economic development would be delivered in Pitt County, take this out to 80 to 100 different industry representatives to raise the money. The Development Commission has put in their motion, and their recommendation to you is that before any study is taken out as to any changes of how economic development is delivered in Pitt County, that it come back to each of the 4 respective jurisdictions that are paying for the study. There's no need to put something out there that maybe there's not agreement upon. There are also additional stakeholders besides the city, the county, the Committee 100, and GUC. You do have other stakeholders being, again, the chamber,
municipalities.
Yeah, other non-municipalities.
Because the Pitt County Development Commission is obviously all of Pitt County, the steering committee for this group consists of the county manager, and that certainly is our preference, the city manager, the general manager of GUC, and the chair of the Pitt County Committee of 100. Because the expectations that you all have for us include the municipalities, we ask that they be paid attention to, as well as the city of Greenville. And Scott mentioned that steering committee that I just mentioned again, that anything would go back to that steering committee before there being a fundraiser. A point of clarification, the fundraising effort, as I understand it, would not be for the Committee of 100. It would be for a new umbrella organization. That would be the discussion about fundraising. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes.
Scott?
Thank you.
But the Committee of 100 would still be in existence, just like all of these other entities?
I don't think we can answer that question at this point. That, again, the idea of the study is to look at overall delivery of economic development and how do we best do that.
And as you recall, we've entered into previous studies. I think 2012 was probably the most recent. Was that the Biggins-Lacey-Shapiro?
Biggins-Lacey-Shapiro is very early on, and it was specifically about whether or not we could compete in the life sciences sector, and the indication was that indeed we could. The other studies that have come along have been community assessments more than delivery of economic development assessments. And that's not splitting a hair. That if we're talking about community assessments, it's
do we have the assets we need, whether it's to recruit new industry? And again, I think we need a little more information about, are we talking strictly about industrial recruitment, which is only one piece of economic development, or economic development overall, which is a different thing. But this is to assess our delivery system, basically. The county has our office, the city of Greenville has an office. GUC employs at least one person whose job is specifically economic development. Some of our municipalities, the town of Winterville, for instance, has a community and economic developer, as does the town of Ayden. So we have different partners that are involved in the process.
ECU is a major entity as well.
And of course, they've just launched their rural development initiative. But to look at all of the things we are trying to do in economic development and do them the best we can.
When you're talking about municipalities, are you talking about those municipalities that may not have the resources of the big places like Greenville, such as Griffin that flooded recently, Fountain, and Bethel? Those small areas where population does not exist.
From our perspective, and again, from the perspective of the Pitt County Development Commission Board, Mr. Garrison is, Mr. Garris, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Okay.
Mr. Garris is our liaison. Scott, of course, often attends our meeting, and both were at our discussion about this, and the feeling there was we have to consider all of our incorporated towns. So that's up to and including Bethel and Fountain. That economic development delivery for us means all of those pieces.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Who does the study?
Scott, do you want to?
Study is being contracted with a firm called Convergent, which is an independent consultant who will be working for, I think technically the Committee 100 will be signing the agreement or contract, but working for the 4 jurisdictions who are funding it.
But who are they?
The 4 jurisdictions?
No, well, who is
Who's Convergent?
You want to answer that?
I was going to say, you may have had more detailed discussion about Convergent than I have. I know Convergent, and I have not worked with them before, so I can't say I've got this direct experience and can say. What I know of them has been in the fundraising area, going into a community and maybe hired by an organization like ours to raise money in support. In the materials that they provided to the Committee of 100, it does include jurisdictions. Jacksonville is the one that comes to mind for me, where they did both some assessment and some fundraising.
Basically, the proposal to conduct the study, I think Tony Cannon, the GUC executive director, I think pretty much presented it to the Committee 100. There was no vetting of other consultants. I mean, this is the only consultant that's been considered.
Jimmy.
This issue was discussed long and in significant detail at the Development Commission, our last meeting. And the conclusion finally was that we should support this. Therefore, I move that we do support it and that we base that support on the conditions as outlined in our agenda packet, that the information comes back to us, the 4 entities, before anything is implemented.
I second that.
I wasn't really finished.
Go ahead, Tom.
Is this really necessary? Why do we have a development group? Why does the city have a development group? Why do we have all these things, and then we have to go have a study? Why can't this be done internal to the county with the resources that we have? Why do we have to go pay somebody else money to do this? What do they bring to the table that we shouldn't already have ourselves?
I think, and Wanda, you can pipe in here too, but I think the question being raised is there duplication of efforts amongst all the different entities in Pitt County working on economic development? I think even the bigger question is, has the county been, the Development Commission and county been as effective as it could have been. We're hearing comments about there's been no large or significant announcements of industry coming to Pitt County. We've said if you're talking about an automobile plant, then yes, that is true and correct. But we do have the data going back the last couple of decades showing all the number of jobs that have been created and tax base has been created. And in some instances, we've even told the working group there were, at least in one large case, one large announcement that we were precluded from, not allowed to share the announcement with a significant number of jobs and tax base being generated due to the sensitivity of the product that local industry was manufacturing.
The industry has a major contract with the Department of Defense, and the information can't be shared publicly. So in that case, we simply couldn't share that information. I don't want to sound too far-flung, and it's a matter of national security, but at the same time, when they tell us as a private corporation.
Very many of our efforts are going to really impact national security. They may, but I'd like to reach back into everybody's memory. If you go back into the 50s and 60s in particular, there were many automobile manufacturers in Europe, BMW and others, that looked at eastern North Carolina first to put all the plants here. Now if you go to I-85 between Charlotte and Atlanta, actually it swings all the way over to Birmingham, Alabama. If you look at that corridor there are gazillions of automotive plants and ancillary businesses, and we didn't get them. We didn't get a chance at it. You know why? Do you remember why? I remember this so well. It's because they came to the legislature and said, what are you doing to help your community colleges to be able to graduate people that will be able to work in our factories? And the legislature was willing to do virtually nothing. South Carolina said, ooh, we'll help. And that's why they're there and not here. But so I believe that we need to work together. It was really interesting to me that the new mayor, Mayor Conley, came to us commissioners and wanted us to enter into some kind of, I'm going to say, joint meetings and so on, to where we would be able to take economic development. And he doesn't care if he spends money in the city and it ends up down in Aden, because people are still going to live in Greenville. They're still going to shop in Greenville. And I thought it was very refreshing that the mayor is looking at not just Greenville being Greenville and forgetting everybody else. And he was wanting the county to work together in all these organizations. GUC, Greenville Utility Corporation, is flush with money. Yeah, they raised the rates, but if you remember, they never passed on the full amount of money when the energy prices went down. They only shared a small amount of it. So they got money pooled. Why don't they fund the whole thing themselves if they're really all that interested? But again, I'm going to go back to my original question. What does this organization have? What do they offer that we shouldn't already have within the various resources that we have in the county? The different organizations. The one that you had, the city, other Greenville Utilities, the Committee for 100.
I think the feeling of the Committee of 100, GUC, and the city, and then with the county invited in, is that third-party objective organization would examine all of our assets and all of the work that we each do.
But what that suggests to me is that these other organizations, yours and all these others within the county, are being territorial. Would you be willing to say that we're being territorial and therefore we have to go out and get this organization to come in here and try to act as a mediator to try to pull everybody together to pull the rope in the same direction? Is that really what this is all about?
I can only speak for myself, and peripherally for the Development Commission. I don't think any of us, and I don't suppose any of those organizations are being territorial. I think that each is trying to step out, and out of a devotion to economic development, a genuine commitment, that we are collectively saying, we don't know for sure what the best model might look like. Do you merge the city and the county offices? I don't know. I mean, nobody has said do that. Certainly in terms of partnering together, we all have that commitment. We've got a visit on Wednesday that the last time we pulled this group together to be ready, we've got 26 different individuals from a dozen different organizations involved. So we're willing to work together. I think this is to answer the question, how do we best work together?
Do you support this one? I trust you and I believe a lot in you. So
Yeah, I certainly support the examination. We don't know if we support the end product until we see it, and that's the reason.
Given that, then I'll support Jimmy's motion.
Anybody else that wants to comment?
I would like to ask this question. How long has the Committee of 100 been in place?
A long time.
And I don't know, I think there was an organization in the very distant past, but most recently it's since 1995.
And it was before that, and if I'm correct, it was one of the first efforts back that first time when Pitt County and these people that were part of that committee were from all over this county. It's actually one of the first times that there has been a group that has looked at development in Pitt County, not counting the Development Commission because it's been in existence longer. But my point is, I understand exactly what Tom is saying, but they're doing this all over the United States. They're doing it all over North Carolina, small towns, large towns. And I think the study needs to be done. We need to get focused on one group guiding and leading us through. And we may not like what they say when the study's over, and we may want to look in a different direction. But I'm in favor of it because I think we need to be proactive where development is concerned for Pitt County.
For clarity's sake, the Committee of 100 is a 501c3.
Yes. And
it exists to support things that the county might not be able to.
Exactly.
Probably the easiest example is that the Committee of 100 owns the land in Indegreen Corporate Park. If we were dealing with a private property owner, the price per acre is the price per acre. I mean, they may move some.
But we wouldn't have Indegreen without them, right?
Well,
I mean, initially,
I was going to say it starts getting really complicated because Greenville Industries actually purchased the property and all of that. But they hold that land at an industrial price for us. They do the property management of Indegreen for us. So we don't have the Committee of 100 doing industrial recruitment or uptown recruitment. They are there as a support to the agencies and organizations that do.
But it is easier for you to recruit because you got Indegreen Park.
Well, and Farmville Corporate Park.
Exactly, but I'm just saying that we don't need to back off of this. We need to be a part of the study and then need to make a decision.
The county always needs to play a leadership role in anything that is going on in terms of economic development. We have the longest history. Our commissioners, 1957, made the decision to approach the legislature to create an organization that would not be political, that would not be just a unit, a department of county government. The Development Commission is a commission just as GUC is a commission. We look very similar. And it's our responsibility to be part of these conversations and part of this planning process.
Charles?
Madam Director, where is Uptown Greenville in all this?
I do not know. The partners that were invited in, if you will, by the Committee of 100 were GUC, the city of Greenville and Pitt County.
Yeah, I just wanted noted
I
that
don't
they
know.
are historically very territorial.
No, I do not know.
If there's any further discussion, I think we all acknowledge the good work of all of these groups. The economy has come about to improve as a result of the overt efforts by all of these groups. This $40,000 or $50,000 in enhancement to try to bring some more from that. And of course, it says in our notes you have to create a new 501c now, whether that's in need or not, but it's for the study of that. I dare say you could put the chairman of each of these groups together within an hour. That could give you what you were talking about, Tom. The benefit of experience, the benefit of knowledge, and then you can label it a study. But regardless of that, I think this is an overt effort to be together, to come about, and to produce. Are we very devoted? I believe we have a motion, don't we?
Yes.
Made second. No further discussion. All in favor of the motion indicate by raising your right hand. All opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next.
Next, you have item for decision. If we have Mike Emery, our Public Information Director, come forward. This is for, as he comes out, concerning a memorandum of understanding, and basically to increase a half-time position in his department to a full-time. I think, Wanda, did you have something you wanted?
Sure. In the marketing budget that you approve as a part of our budget, there is a significant sum of money that has to be spent on collateral materials, on videos. Based on the work we have done with Mike and his department in the last 6 months to a year, we believe that we can get better materials, more materials for the same amount of money by sharing this employee than we can by spending that money in the private sector. I know people don't often believe that you can save money by spending it in the public sector instead of in the private sector, but in this case, our budget would not change. So the Development Commission budget that we would present to you will look the way it has for the last several years. Our internal line items that indicate things like video production, we would shift to a different line item with our MOU, then just as it would function the same way MIS does. That when MIS does work for our office, we are billed and we pay that amount. This would be the same kind of arrangement. One reason that we're anxious to do this, besides the fact that we think we'll get more product faster, we also think it's better product. That based on the work Mike and his team have done, whether it's script writing or, they produce our existing industry video. They find out like 5 days before the event's going to happen because we keep that information close, and produce a great video. For any of you who saw the Dyneema video, I think was the very last existing industry, the industry of the year, that comes out of Mike's office. So we think this is a way to save some money, more product, better product. Mike?
Yeah, I'll just add to that by saying it's a win-win-win in that it keeps a very valuable member of our staff full-time, so he's here every day of the week, so he doesn't have to break his train of thought to go to a different job. It also allows us to share it allows us to share materials back and forth because, a lot of what we do is closely aligned with what Juan and her staff does, so we'll be able to have that kind of in-house sharing of materials. And as she said, it allows a more consistent and higher quality of product to be put out on a more timely basis. I think before we started helping her, the average turnaround for new content for their office was once every 6 months to a year. This will give them a turnaround of one video or more a month, which if they were having to pay private sector to come in, learn the material they want them to learn, and then produce something, it would be cost prohibitive. So, like I said, it benefits our office, the commission, and it also benefits the employee by having him here full-time. So it's a win-win-win.
Motion to approve.
Second.
In discussion? Not all in favor indicate by raising your right hand. All opposed, like so ordered. Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Okay, Next, you have Jordan Smith, who's going to present the drone ordinance revisions from the last conversation with the board on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Since your last meeting, there was one minor change to the ordinance at the direction of the board in an attempt to remove radio-controlled fixed-wing aircraft from the ordinance. And so that's been the one minor change since the last time this was before you. If the board wants to move forward, we're recommending that you accept the draft and advertise and hold a public hearing at your next meeting on February 19th.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to second that with a comment. I think that after reading all of the finding of facts, it seems to me that this is worthy of moving forward with it. So I certainly support that.
All right, any further discussion? We'll just go around. Come on.
Just a question, do we need to note the farmer's drone that's working automatically for the farmer?
Certainly something the board can direct me
Autonomous.
to
I mean, can we do it? I mean, can you do it without, I mean, can we direct you to do that and still move forward with the approval?
I think so, given there would be one just minor change.
Well, can I put that in the form of a motion?
I think if
have that added.
I believe he answered your question.
Okay.
That could be covered in the original motion. Isn't that what she asked you?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so
Chance?
Yes.
if you who made the motion, if they would approve, I mean, add that.
If the second will agree to that, then I made the motion and I would agree to that, to add that.
Okay. Beth, anything else?
That's it.
Glenn, Charles, Ann?
I was just gonna say, to add the farmer's exemption.
Does that incorporate, Beth, anything that Mr. Banks, I know with that.
I think Mr. Banks was supporting were you not supporting that was what I was getting.
Is he still here?
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
That was it.
All right, all in favor of the motion indicate by raising your right hand. All opposed? So ordered. Thank you, sir. Thank you, each of you. All right, Mr. Elliott.
Next, you have on the agenda the EMS ambulance purchase bid award. If Alan Everett will come forward to present this matter.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're here to ask for permission to award a bid for 5 EMS unit ambulance remounts this morning. This project is something that is currently within our EMS, the budget within our department. Through the bidding process, we had 4 vendors that submitted bids to us. And this morning, we're here to say that the low bid vendor was first priority. The county recommended first priority based on the North Carolina procurement law as the low bidder. We shared this information with our EMS Oversight Committee, who disagreed with our recommendation. The Oversight Committee, they actually recommended that you consider going with Select Custom Vehicles. Just so you'll know that the pricing that we're talking about, first priority's price was $78,300 per ambulance. Select's was $79,779.43. That's a difference of about $1,479.43. But based on the North Carolina procurement law, staff is recommending that we contract with the lowest responsible bidder, which is First Priority Emergency Vehicles this morning.
I have a question.
All right, Mary.
I'd like to know the quality or the service end of the difference in the two companies.
And I don't know that I can truly answer that, Commissioner. I can say that the experiences that we've had with both have resulted in acceptable quality. So there's not, I don't know that we can say one over the other, to be honest with you.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question? It's my understanding that I think it's the North Carolina procurement law, requires us to take the lowest bid. Is that correct?
That's correct. When all things are
when everything else is equal.
Right. So it's not a preference of who we are selecting. It's something that we're bound by law that we have to look at the proposals, and we have to make a decision based off of who's the low bidder based off of North Carolina law. So it's not, I don't want to use the term popularity contest. It's not as to whether who we prefer to deal with or not, but it's basically, it's just how the law sort of governs us in terms of how we make selections for awarding projects.
With that said, I don't think we have any choice. I'd like to move that we accept the recommendation.
I second it.
Alan, your sheet that you have on here about the bids, I suppose, explain to me the two bottom ones are the two in contention. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It would be Select Custom and First Priority.
And when you get over here to trade-in credit, 1,500 on one and 500 on the other one. Tell me how that affects your overall price on the right. Is that included, or is that to come later if you have a trade-in? Is that part of the contract?
The trade-in value is added to both of those final numbers on the right-hand side.
So you're getting a larger trade-in on the first one?
Yes, sir.
Does that diminish to $7,900 by using that trade-in?
That's how we got to the 78,300 and the 79,779.
No, I mean the 79, the one above it.
Yes, sir.
You took 1,500 off the bid.
Yes, sir.
To get to this. Is that what you're telling?
Yes, sir.
And then down at the bottom, when you took 500 off to get that bid.
Yes, sir.
And, that was all in your overall bid?
Yes, sir. We asked in our proposal if that they would share, if there is a trade-in credit given, that they show that, and all that was given to all the bidders, and that was the only two that showed us a trade-in credit, as you see on the sheet, and that's factored into the total bid amount price, that final price.
Now, you just said if a trade is made, but I mean, does this say that there is going to be a trade-in, or open to be congestion?
So we don't have to trade in our other ambulances. When we send one for a remount, it's on an ambulance right now.
So if you didn't trade it in, then the top one might get the bid. Is that correct?
No, sir. The amount that they're offering us for trade-in is reflected in that 1,500.
Okay.
They've already offered us that, but we don't, as a county government, we could have them just give us that old chassis back, and we could try to sell it, but it may be easier for us to just trade it in and they dispose of it.
I understand what the attorney would tell us about we're required to take, Beth, or whoever made the motion, the low bid, but I personally feel that if we have people living in Pitt County, paying taxes in Pitt County, bidding on a project, that they should have some consideration in and above someone that's not. But now, whether or not there is room for negotiation in it, and I believe there's one group that recommended the high bid. Is that correct, Alan?
No,
or
sir.
had some suggestion to it?
No, sir. In terms of the discussion outside of county staff was with the oversight committee, and their recommendation was to select. So really the only conversations I'm aware of has been between custom and first priority.
All right. Glenn, excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How long have we done business with Select?
Since Pitt County has been in the business of purchasing ambulances, so that would be 15 years or so.
And it's been, up to this point, quality and acceptable?
Yes, sir.
And so not to just, I'm not going to repeat everything Mr. Owen said, but I echo his sentiments in that, and I understand the need for the law, but and we're talking about a negligible amount.
$7,500.
Right. It's not like we would be, paying an extra $100,000 to keep it local. We're talking about $7,500. Well, I thought it was $1,400. Per unit. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So $7,500 to keep it in county. I think I'm sure the other business does a fine job, but I prefer things local because we can get our hands on people. It's easier to reach out and touch them if we have an issue, and they're vested in the community because they live here, they work here, families participate in county events and services. But and then on the law side, I mean, if there's going to be a law that says you got to do something, then what are we even needed for? I mean, why are we even sitting here deciding?
Had you finished, Glenn?
I'm done, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
The amount of differences is how much?
It looked like a small
How much?
amount of money.
$7,400 when we look at the project overall, but it's roughly $1,400.
How do you get that when this right here is on the 14 scale?
Because there's five units, so you times it by 5.
All right, okay, all right, I got you there.
Could we ask the attorney if there's any wiggle room here? Because I certainly am in favor of local. I didn't think there was an opportunity to be able to break the law.
There is not. There is not, and this board has in the past, and many folks, including the Oversight Committee, would like to have some ability to have a local preference. That's not the way the law is written. When you're expending public funds and you engage in a formal request for proposal process, the law is written so that it tells you how that process works, gives everybody the opportunity to bid on it, and then it has you to compare your lowest responsive responsible bidders, and then the lowest bid is the one to be awarded. If the board feels strongly about there needing to be a local preference, that might be something we want to talk in our legislative goals. If we want authority from the General Assembly to be able to stray from those general statutes, that might be something we could consider. But the law as it's written today would require you, in the face of 2 responsible bids with both being complete, both being equal, the law requires you, when you're spending public funds, to spend the lesser amount.
Charles is next, but one more. Didn't you want to speak, Charles?
No.
Let me say one thing before you do, Charles.
The
This
liaison has something to say here. Ann.
Go ahead, Mark, and say what you mean.
This board has the authority to reject this bid, don't we?
You may certainly reject all bids.
All right, okay.
Okay.
Now, Charles, I believe you wanted to say something?
No, I defer to Ann, who's now
Excuse me, Ann.
liaison.
Okay, I just want, as the liaison person to that board, which I went to the meeting, was my first meeting, and there was much discussion about the two, the lower bid and the bid that they wanted to use, which was the in-county vendor. And they said that services had been great with what dealing with this company in the past, quality service. So they wanted to use Select, I believe, is the one that we want to use. We did not talk about the procurement law at that time, and but it was, as I said, much discussion on that, and because of the interaction with and with the in-county vendor, we felt that it was in the best interest of this to use to make this proposal that we use the Select instead of the lowest bidder. I think I'm right in that. So I'm in support of what the committee wants to do, the oversight committee wants to do. So I support that. But
thank you. Jimmy, did you want to say something?
Yes.
She says she supports.
I am 100% supportive of using local people whenever we can. However, we also owe it to the citizens that we select the lowest bidder, assuming everything is equal. And we have concluded that everything is equal because both of these companies were given the same information to make their bid. Now, we have a gentleman here that has a legitimate bid that came all the way from Asheville. Did you come all the way from Asheville? Jefferson. Because he has a legitimate bid and he is interested in getting this contract. And his bid is $7,500 less for these 5 vehicles. Now, I'm not one that's just going to vote to pay $7,500 more of taxpayers' money just because the person is local when the product is the same. Now, I would love for the local bidder to be the lower bid, but he's not. And if we are going to nullify the process, then we need to say in the future we'll only let Pitt County folks bid on these kinds of projects.
Anybody else? Tom?
When I was managing the company, which I've stepped down from, but we always went local if we could. But if there was a company in Winston-Salem that had a better price than Craven County or Pitt County, or guess where we went? We went for the lower price. And there was nothing underhanded. The local people could have bid less. They did not. Some you win, some you lose. That's all.
All right, so what's the pleasure of the board?
Call for question.
Do we have a motion to?
I would make the motion that we follow staff's recommendation.
We've already made one.
All right, we've already got
Call
that.
for question.
The motion's on the.
All right,
Wait, but what is the motion? That we go with?
To go with the recommendation
bid.
because of
The
the
lowest
North
bid.
Carolina
Yes.
procurement law.
Okay, fine.
Somebody seconded, but she did make the motion.
You did.
You did it.
Oh, I
Motion
did.
by Ms. Ward, seconded by Mary Perkins Williams.
All right, we got a motion made and seconded. All in favor of the motion, raise your right hand.
I'm not sure I understand what we're voting on.
All
We're voting
opposed?
to go with this recommendation.
Go with the recommendation.
Which is,
Did you get the vote?
The lowest bid.
which is the
To go
lowest
with
bid.
the lowest bid.
First priority.
Did you get the vote?
We did
All
not.
right, let's start all over. All in favor of the motion as it exists now, raise your right hand. All opposed?
That passes.
Thank you. All right, what's next?
Next, you have an appointment to the Greenville Planning and Zoning Commission. And on this one, on page 61, you have a resignation of Anthony Herring, and you have a request to appoint Kenneth Wilson to a regular ETJ member.
Motion to approve that.
Second it.
All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. So ordered.
Your last item is appointments and removals to Pitt County Nursing Home Adult Care Home Community Advisory Committee. And on this one, the Mideast Commission is recommending to appoint Madeline Jones and Ellen Parker.
Motion to
this-
approve.
And also to remove Glorstein Brown and Pat Leary as outlined in the abstract.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. In discussion. All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. Thank you. What you got next?
Commissioners' comments, committee reports?
Melvin,
No comments, Mr.
Tom,
None.
Mary?
I'm really sad about the energy bills that's coming out. I mean, and people, seniors getting their lights cut off when there was 20 degrees weather. It really concerns me. That's my comment.
Could I back up?
Yes, Tom. Had
She
you
brings
finished,
this-
Mary?
She brings this up.
Wait, Tom, had you finished, Mary?
Yeah, I'm really
Go ahead.
concerned
She
about
brings
that.
this up, and it's interesting. I got a notice from GUC with a bill that was extremely high, and they said I had failed to pay. I had a canceled check. They sent it out to me approximately a week prior to me getting it. I don't know why it takes 7 days or 6 days to go from one side of Greenville to the other, but they told me that they were going to cut my power off in 2 days, even though I had a canceled check. I called them up, and it happened to be during the snowstorm and stuff. And of course, they didn't do it. But the thing is, they only gave me 2 days. 2 days. That's not much warning. And I think that they need to adjust their give at least 30 days or something to where people have a chance to adjust. So I learned that just by accident.
Thank you,
It's a
Tom.
health hazard cutting
Beth?
off senior stuff.
No comment.
Lynn? Charles?
No.
Jimmy?
Mr. Chairman, one of the highlights of my life has been to serve as a county commissioner for the citizens of Pitt County. And I really appreciate the citizens of District 5 giving me that opportunity. It again has been an honor and a privilege. But after a lot of prayer and consideration, I have concluded that I will not be seeking re-election for my 5th term.
God bless you.
Well, spring it on us, Jimmy.
Sad news, but we're appreciative of all that you have given Jimmy.
Thank you.
It's been an untold selfish approach, been wise, much wisdom, and Your presence will truly be missed.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mark.
And
Well, I just want to say thank you for serving. And no other comments.
I'm just shocked.
okay, any further business?
A motion to adjourn.
All in favor, stand.
All right, I'm right, that one.
That'll work.